On today's episode, we tackle the last of the HCI series. Hello, and welcome to the ExploreVM Podcast. Today we tackle the last episode of the Hyperconverged series. As I mentioned in the previous episodes, the goal for the series is to help build an understanding of hyperconverged infrastructure, its place in the data center world, and spotlight the various ways that vendors are deploying HCI. And once again, I've either contacted the vendors directly or have been contacted by them to participate. And with that said, this is not a sponsored series. I am not receiving any sort of compensation for these appearances, and all vendors appearing have a very strict set of rules laid out for their appearances. 1. No bashing other HCI vendors. 2. Keep it technical. This is a technical podcast. 3. This is not a free commercial for your product. And 4. No bashing other HCI vendors. All right, and with that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into this episode. My guests today are from StorMagic. Guys, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Great, thanks, Paul. My name is Bruce Kornfeld from StorMagic, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer and GM of the Americas. And we're excited to join you today.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. This is Brian Granger. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at StorMagic, based here in Charlotte, North Carolina.
All right, and with every other session that I've done in the HCI series, let's go ahead and dive right in. So question 1, what does hyperconverged mean to StorMagic?
Okay, so this is Bruce. I can kick things off here, but look, as everyone knows, the technical definition of hyperconverged is simple. It's just a way to bring server, compute, storage, networking all together in one place to make it simpler and not have lots of boxes to manage and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, it's taking off around the world. But when you ask about what hyperconverged means to StorMagic, just a slight little twist to that, which is StorMagic is all about making technology simple for customers, and that's why HCI fits in perfectly for what we do. So what it means for us is our software, we're a software-defined storage developer. So our software is basically down at the storage level, virtualizing the disk drives inside of any server. So we're a piece of the puzzle, and the way it works is that our software is used by reseller partners, server partners to build the full solution around hyperconverged. So we're a piece of the overall puzzle that develops a big hyperconverged solution. For us, the differentiator is that where we see hyperconverged playing really well is for the edge of the enterprise, at the edge or in small data centers, because in those places, they usually don't have the resources, the budget, the technology to build, traditional 3-tier architectures. So hyperconverged really fits even better in the edge than it does in the data center. Now, I do know that data center customers are building massive farms of hyperconverged, but there's still a lot of instances there where in the data center, they're still using 3-tier because, there are going to be times where you just need a petabyte of storage on the floor or hundreds and hundreds of terabytes of storage on the floor, and building it node by node with a hyperconverged may not make as much sense. So, for us, we're very focused on solving customer problems that are smaller in nature, edge computing, IoT, wind farms, retail outlets where the retailers have hundreds or thousands of sites and they just need a little bit of compute, but they want it as compact and simple as possible. And that's where we focus, and that's our take on hyperconverged.
Yeah, and Bruce, to add on to that, with the focus that we have is out there in the edge. I think most folks will recognize that the leading analysts out there are showing explosive growth in the HCI market, specifically at the edge, over the next 3 to 5 years. So we're extremely well positioned. We've got thousands of customers in over 70 countries around the world, and with a real focus out there on the edge, we have some real marquee named retail accounts, law firms, hospital systems, where they don't have a tremendous amount of data, but it's very, very critical. For instance, one of our very large customers here in the United States is a big box home building store with over 3,000 locations. While they only have maybe a couple of terabytes of data at the store level, it's extremely important. It's extremely critical information, and so they're using our solution to protect that at the edge.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Brian. Actually, I was going to bring that up in that, whether you believe whether you believe analysts or not, um, in this case, I really do. The trend is to move compute and storage to where the data is being generated. And there's a massive migration from data center and cloud out to the edge. A lot of the reasons is that's where data is being generated, and it's not always easy to get data back to a data center or a cloud. And one of my favorite pieces of research. I'm not doing this to plug Gartner, but it is public information, so I'll say it. They published a piece of research, I don't know, about 6 months ago, that's gotten a lot of attention. It's called "The Data Center is Dead." They did it a little bit tongue in cheek just to get attention. Obviously, it's not going away, but there is a massive migration that's planned and is happening. And it just feels like hyperconverge is a great technology to do that because, as everyone knows, at the edge, you don't need a lot of storage and server and networking, but you need it to be reliable, and you need it to be easy. And that's what hyperconverge is all about. So it's a really good fit.
And that's actually a pretty good segue now into our next question of what does the architecture look like for StorMagic? What are we looking at for hypervisors? What about the management and the upgrades, expanding the product once it's in there, overall installation? Go ahead and dive right in.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, so as far as the architecture, it's really, really simple, and that's what we set out to do when the company was founded. The basic architecture of our product has been the same for over a decade. Obviously, we've improved it, we've added features and all that kind of stuff, but the core of what we do is really, really simple, and it's designed that way. It's designed to be a very simple architecture. So we use synchronous mirroring is at the core of what we do. So the way a StorMagic cluster is built is that you take two physical servers of any type, of any size, with any storage inside it. So we are completely server hardware agnostic, as long as it's an x86, of course, Intel or AMD. It doesn't matter what brand or what size disk drives you have, spinning, SSD. We support all flash, all spinning, or hybrid. Um, and then what our software does is we virtualize the storage, obviously, inside each of those servers, and then we create a highly available cluster between the two servers using synchronous mirroring. So a lot of our IP is based on how to ensure that data blocks make it from one server to the other before writes are acknowledged to really ensure 100% uptime. So just like an old-fashioned disk array has two controllers in it, and a lot of time, energy, and money has been spent over decades of perfecting how to make sure that those two controllers can handle I/O and can keep things up and running, and all of the failure scenarios that might happen. That's what we do really well. So at the core of our architecture is two servers, synchronous mirroring between them, create the highly available cluster between two servers, and we present up storage then for the hypervisor to use, and then dish out to all of the VMs that are hosted. So, going a little bit deeper into that. So the way it works is our software runs as a VSA, a virtual storage appliance, as a guest VM on top of, I can't say any hypervisor, but three of them anyway. So VMware, obviously, VMware's vSphere, Microsoft Hyper-V, and we also support open source hypervisors based on KVM. And that is a differentiator for us because the way that we support KVM, unlike some others in the industry that have taken open source KVM and built their own stack, if you will, and they deliver KVM as part of their solution. We don't know anyone else that's done it this way, which is it's install your own version of KVM, however you want to do it. Completely free and open source. Do you want to get it from Red Hat? Do you want to get it from SUSE? Whatever flavor of KVM you choose, our VSA will work right on top of it, no problem. So we support those 3 hypervisors. We run as a guest VM. Very, very simple to install. It takes 7 minutes or less to get us up and running. We do have our own management interface for customers to use if they really want to dive into lots of bells and whistles and features. But most of our customers just use the plugin that we have for vCenter. As you can imagine, 80-90% of our customers are using VMware. So we have a really robust plugin to vCenter. So most of our customers just use our vCenter plugin and manage it that way. So anyway, so a little bit more about the architecture. So synchronous mirroring I talked about. Paul, you mentioned upgrades, so I'll just talk about that here real quick. Because of the way we're designed, there can be a failure on any side of the cluster. Anything can go down, and we can stay up and running, obviously. So if one server goes down, the VM that is blown away quickly migrates to the other server with the help of VMware, of course, or Microsoft. But the storage is already there, so there's no delay at all. So applications won't see an error, and nothing bad happens. The reason I mention that during upgrades is that most hardware can handle on-the-fly additions of disk drives. So a disk drive add shouldn't require server downing. But if you want to add memory, you want to add processors, you want to change anything in the architecture, it's just a simple fail the server over, do your upgrades, fail back, and away you go. So we can expand storage, we can expand CPU. Another thing that's interesting about our architecture is that what you're creating is a cluster that supports highly available storage. The VMs that have access to the storage can live on the 2 servers, obviously, but they can also be other servers. So any server on the network can see the StorMagic cluster as an iSCSI target. And the way that is beneficial to a customer is that they can have a 6, 8, 10, 32, doesn't matter, node VMware cluster, all using the StorMagic highly available storage at the core. So we have scalable compute by using any server on the network, and we just look like an iSCSI target at that point in time. Let's see, what else do I want to mention? I was talking about management a little bit, architecture. You know what, just two other things I haven't mentioned. We can talk a little bit more about it later in the podcast, but there's two features that I think play really well in this environment. One of them is predictive storage caching, which is our ability to use not just SSD and spinning disk, but we also have the ability to use system memory to do tiering across volumes. So we're constantly looking at blocks, monitoring usage, and we're able to move blocks of data between the tiers to optimize performance. And a lot of times customers are able to get significantly higher performance out of spinning drives than they might have in the past because they just use one SSD for caching. And again, at the edge, we're not talking about petabytes or even hundreds of terabytes. We're talking about 2 to 100 terabytes of data, which isn't that much to manage. So predictive storage caching works really well. And another thing that we do architecturally that I'll probably save for later to talk about is security. We've got a really nice feature called Store Secure that helps customers secure their data at the edge. But I can get into that a little bit more later.
Bruce, I'd like to add on to that. You've touched on a lot of our features and what's the secret sauce behind StorMagic. There's a lot of interesting indirect value proposition that customers see. For instance, I was just at a customer last week over in Germany, for instance, and the 3 things that they pointed out when they were looking at us versus the 3 or 4 other companies out there that that would have been an okay fit in their solution. One, we can start as low as 2 nodes. Now, some other companies can do 2 nodes, but there's others that require 3 node or in some cases 4 nodes. So, when you look at that, just the hardware savings alone on having to not buy those extra servers was the price value proposition that helped us in that opportunity. Second, and this is really important when you think about the longevity of your infrastructure. We are, as you pointed out, hardware agnostic. We can run on any kind of server. We're very lightweight. In fact, in a 2-node cluster, we can have one of the servers be a Lenovo server and one of them be a Dell server. It doesn't matter to us. And there's the other companies out there that are in this space require very, very similar hardware on both sides. So that kind of we prevent customers from vendor lock-in. And then the third, and you might want to touch on this a little bit more from a technical standpoint, is how our witness architecture works, where we can see 1 up to 1,000 sites, where it's extremely limited using other solutions. If you want to touch on the witness piece real quick, that would be great.
Okay, so right, so for the witness, that is something I was going to mention. So that is a big difference for us. When there, I assume, Paul, the audience is fairly technical, but I'll just say it anyway. Like when you have,
I would like to think they are. Sorry.
Probably much more than me, but that's okay. When you have a highly available cluster, there's usually a need for some kind of witness or quorum just to make sure if something were to go south, that the remaining nodes know what to do. Right? That's a layman's way to say it. And our witness, this is something that we developed many years ago, and that is a big differentiator. Our witness is designed to be able to manage many locations just from a single witness, a single virtual machine. So our witness technology is designed to monitor heartbeat only. In other architectures, witnesses need to be heavier in terms of hardware because they're in the data path. A lot of solutions use erasure coding and scalable clusters, and once you start doing that, it makes scalability difficult, and it also causes your witness to be a little bit beefier. In our case, we're just monitoring heartbeat, so the witness can be very, very lightweight. As a matter of fact, we just had some fun in social media over the last couple of weeks because the release of the Raspberry Pi 4. Our witness can run on a Raspberry Pi and can manage 1,000 locations from a single VM. That's how lightweight it is, and a lot of our customers like it because we can the networking requirements are so minimal. We can handle a 3,000 millisecond delay, as well as I think it's a 9 kilobit per second connection. So we don't need a gigabit connection. 9 kilobit per second, that's basically a satellite link. So that's why we're winning business at wind farms, oil rigs, where they just don't have Ethernet, right? So our witness technology helps us a lot with customers because they start to see, okay, if I go with StorMagic, I basically, just to stretch the point, I just need to stick a Raspberry Pi in my data center, and I can manage all 1,000 sites. Whereas with other solutions, they typically need a single VM to manage each location, and that kind of adds up because you need a lot more server technology just to run the witnesses. So that's a good thing. In the way that we handle witness technology, it's a big differentiator for us, and customers really like it. The other thing I want to mention is, I just thought of this when Brian was talking about the number of nodes. There's something else that we do architecturally that's interesting, in that we can put 3 servers in a cluster, and we can survive 2 server failure and keep on running. And that's not common. Most other HCI solutions, in order to have a cluster that can survive and keep running after 2 node failures, they usually need to start with 4 servers and sometimes even 5. And the way we do that is because of our synchronous mirroring architecture. The 3-node cluster would basically be each node sets up mirrors to the other 2 nodes for all of its volumes. So if a server goes down, the remaining 2 servers have all of the volumes, and they continue to run in a highly available manner. So they're mirroring between each other. So one server fails, you still have HA. If 2 servers fail, you're still operating on the single server that's left. And that is a unique selling proposition that a lot of our customers really like. And the biggest request, the biggest use case for that is not because they want to worry about 2 servers failing, even that's a good benefit. It's because they want to be able to do maintenance on a server and still have HA. So we're winning business around the world because of that differentiator, and that we can do that with only 3 servers.
Well, my next question was going to be what feature of StorMagic really has you excited? But it sounds like you've really kind of touched on a few of those. Is there anything else that jumps out at you that really?
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. So as far as features, yeah, we kind of talked a lot on that last question, but the one that we haven't talked much about that I would say I'm excited about is what we're doing in the world of security with StorSecure. So it's a product that we launched about a month or so ago. We've had encryption built into our solution for over a year, but we just launched StorSecure, which includes encryption as well as a built-in key manager. And let me tell you why this is something that we're pretty excited about. We keep hearing from customers that for the edge and for small data centers, in the past, doing data encryption has been cost prohibitive. It's been hard to do because when you're talking about, let's just say, a regional bank that has 4 branches, or you're talking about a law office that has a single location, or you're talking about a large retailer that has thousands, in all of those examples, cost is king, right? They don't have huge budget to spend at each of those locations. And that's why they love hyperconverged, back to the first question you asked, Paul, right? So the reason they like hyperconverged is because it keeps the costs down, and they can build a hyperconverged cluster with StorMagic for 20 grand, 15 grand, right? So, we're well under 20 grand in some cases, depending on the server configuration and whatnot. Then if they want to encrypt data, they can use self-encrypting drives in some cases, but those are really expensive and hard to find. Or they can use an encryption engine like we have, but you still need a key manager. And key managers, frankly, they're very expensive. A key manager itself can be $7,000 per site. So our customers are looking at like, okay, well, if I'm going to invest in hyperconverged and StorMagic, I really want to do encryption, but the cost of the encryption and the key management really becomes cost prohibitive. So what we did was we came out with StorSecure, which includes our built-in encryption engine. So we're doing software-based encryption. So all writes that come into the server get encrypted before they are written to disk. And it also gets encrypted before we do the synchronous mirror to the other server or 2. So once the data enters server number 1, we're doing the encryption and making sure that all the data in flight is encrypted before it goes to the drives. And in the past, we would tell our customers, you can use any key manager you want as long as it's KMIP compliant, which they all are, obviously. But now we've released our own. So our customers now have the ability to just order one thing from StorMagic, they get the key manager, they get the encryption, it's all built in, and we've been able to include key management with our encryption engine for only a $2,000 list price solution per site. So for every site, it's only $2,000 per. And what that gives them is the encryption and the key management. The key difference on the key manager that we released that is different in the industry is that customers can choose where they store and run the key manager. In some cases, they need to run it at each site physically. So they're going to put it on the cluster. using a different disk drive, hopefully for security reasons, or in the better case, they'll run the key manager on another set of hardware at every location. There are some applications, like we have some military customers that cannot put a key manager centrally. They have to put it at each site. And there are some other retailers that are requiring it also. So there's some cases where the keys need to be local. We can absolutely support that. But they can also be stored in the customer's data center running on any server they want, or they can be stored in a public cloud. So our customers then would create a highly available cluster. Our key manager runs as a virtual machine, and they would simply run 3 of them to create a 3-node highly available cluster. And those instances can be any combination of their own data center or a public cloud like Azure or AWS. As long as there's 3 VMs running the Store Secure key manager, they have a central repository, and that repository then is dishing out keys and storing keys for as many sites as they have, an unlimited number. So so we're really excited about security. We keep hearing more and more about it at the edge. Obviously, security is a huge deal for the data center and the cloud, but the next frontier for securing data and encryption is the edge. It's been cost prohibitive, and that's a problem that StorMagic is addressing by finding a way to rip the cost out of it and keep the encryption engine and the key management absolutely enterprise class without the high cost. So there's the one feature we haven't talked much about that I'm pretty excited about.
So what was the original use case or workload that StorMagic was developed for, and how has it moved past that intention?
Okay, so StorMagic was found. We just had our 13-year anniversary in June, so we've been around for about a little over 13 years. And so when SVSAN came out back then, the original use case was, and you think about it, this is a long time ago. These guys, even though we don't try to take credit or try to make a claim of this, but we were either the first or one of the first, let's just say, to invent the virtual SAN, right? So back then, the standard architecture was servers requiring external storage to be able to use hypervisors. Basically back then it was VMware. VMware required shared storage in order to build a highly available cluster or a scalable cluster between servers. So external storage was still the thing, and we were one of the first to figure out, well, how do you trick out VMware to not know or not care that the shared storage is physical, and we made it virtual. So we were basically building highly available virtual SANs out of industry standard servers very, very early on, like I said, more than a decade ago. So the original use case, when the company was first formed, just like any good young company, building technology and finding the right fit. So back then it was all about trying to replace a standard dual controller, highly available disk array. So it was really positioned as a storage replacement for something that existed. So over the years, what's happened is we've had different types of customers. Obviously, we've learned what works, what doesn't work, where the sweet spot is. Lo and behold, Hyperconverged comes around, which kind of fits perfectly into what we do. Just another way to you make the solution even more streamlined and simple. But how things have evolved is that what we've realized is that large monolithic storage arrays, they are declining, but they're not going away. I mean, there's a lot of business out there where customers just need a really robust storage array for their data center, and that's not the space that we play in. So what we've learned over the years is where we focus, where we've evolved to is focusing on small sites, edge sites, robo, small data center. That's a perfect fit. Because in those locations, they really don't have a massive amount of data anyway. I would say our typical customer is in the 10 to 30 terabyte range. A lot of them are a lot less than that. A lot of retailers, they don't have a lot of data. They're more at the 2 terabyte range. But we're talking about sub 50 terabytes is the average, but the feature set we have has been designed around the needs of these folks to make sure that we have the high availability and 100% uptime, to make sure that we have ease of management so that they can manage all these locations centrally in a really robust, low-cost way to do the witness. And so everything we do is about edge computing and small data center, and it's working well for us, and that's how we've evolved the product over the years.
All right. Well, we've reached the end of our questions for this episode. Where can my listeners find you online?
We're located at www.stormagic.com.
Well, guys, I want to thank you for your time. Appreciate having you on.
Thank you, Paul. I very much appreciate you giving us this opportunity for us to get on and talk all about StorMagic.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
And thank you for listening. This was the last scheduled HCI Series episode, but if you'd like to speak to your product, please do not hesitate to reach out. I would love to schedule more HCI-related episodes. To continue the conversation around today's topic, submit a show idea, or be a guest on the ExploreVM podcast, please contact me on Twitter at ExploreVM, email paul@explorevm.com, or find me on Facebook at facebook.com/ExploreVM. Once again, thank you for listening.